Hey, welcome to Down the Dopamine Hole, where random subjects are forced to hold hands until they get along and then tied together with a psychological concept. I will say that today's subjects are pretty random, and it did take my random brain a little while to figure out how to put them together, but I succeeded. If I were to ask you what color the universe is, what would you say? Probably black, maybe a little bluish, little red, purple, yellow, white thrown in there like sprinkles on ice cream if ice cream were black. But actually, you would be wrong. In 2002, two astronomers, Carl Glazebrook and Ivan Baldry, coordinated data from one of the largest visible galaxy surveys ever completed. It was called the 2DF Galaxy Redshift Survey, if you want to know, which you probably don't, but we all know that I tend to be a little over thorough. It combined all of the light from stars, gas, and other celestial bodies from 200,000 galaxies into a single cosmic spectrum that looked like this. For those of you who are listening, the spectrum is blue on one end, red on the other end. It's kind of green in the middle. The majority of stars were formed over 5 billion years ago, and they were hot, young blue stars. As the stars continue to age from now, they will become red giants, and the universe will take on more of a reddish hue. Eventually, all of the stars are going to disappear, and the universe is just going to be made up of black holes, and the universe will truly be black. We're kind of somewhere in the middle. So, what is the color now? The astronomers took the current spectrum of light and they put it into computer models and color matching procedures to get a single average color of the observable universe that can be seen by the human eye. Keep in mind that we can't see all of the wavelengths of light. However, their first attempt was wrong. The first color that they came up with was a cosmic turquoise, which is kind of like a seafoam green. Since I don't understand the science of all this, I mean, this kind of makes sense to me because if you look at the cosmic spectrum, the middle of the spectrum, which is kind of where we are now, is green. So that kind of makes a little bit of sense. However, this is where my lack of understanding of this science comes in. They realized that they had set their white balance wrong, which was of great embarrassment to the researchers. After fixing the white point, the universe actually looks like this. And for those of you that are not watching, it is a beige color. They put an article in the Washington Post with a picture of the beige universe and a request for possible names. And the names that ended up in the running were Cosmic Latte, Cappuccino Cosmico, Big Bang Buff, Big Bang Blush, Big Bang Beige, Cosmic Cream, Astronomer Green. I'm going to come back to that one in a minute. Astronomer Almond, Skyvery, Unibeige. I kind of like Unibeige. Cosmic Khaki, and Primordial Clam Chowder, which kind of sounds gross. The astronomer green, the only thing that I can think of for that is maybe that was from the original color, that turquoise, but I don't know where that came from. Astronomers at Johns Hopkins University who were involved in the research actually voted for the potential names. And although Cappuccino Cosmico actually had the most votes, Cosmic Latte was chosen as the name of the color. So much for democracy. Kind of like our country now. So, looking at two of the names and the fact that they had to do with coffee made me think of all the specialty coffee drinks that exist now and how people are a little obsessed with them. And it kind of made me wonder why. 100 years ago, would names that involve things like latte and cappuccino have been submitted? And my guess is no. Especially curious because I don't drink coffee. And don't get me wrong, I drink caffeine. I just don't drink coffee. And the whole latte, soy milk, 2 pumps of whatever light foam, 3 pumps of something. Yeah, I don't get it. Okay. Give me a can of pop in the morning and I am just fine. And I know that's probably very much sacrilege to many of you, but look at me. I'm still alive. I survived. What is it about the individualized specialty coffee drinks that people are so into? And in order to understand that, we need to understand a little bit of coffee history. There have been what are called waves of coffee. And these waves represent major changes in the coffee industry and consumption. And so far, there have been three of them. The first wave started in the 1800s, and that is when coffee consumption began to grow pretty exponentially. And this is when people started to understand the benefits of coffee. And no, I'm not talking about the health benefits because although there are kind of some health benefits, hmm, there's a lot of other things that are much healthier. They started to understand the caffeine benefits. They also started to understand the convenience benefits in the fact that you could make a whole pot of coffee at a time as opposed to making a cup at a time of tea. And this is also when instant coffee was created. Coffee could be found in most homes at this point. The second wave didn't happen until the 1970s, over 100 years later, when consumers wanted to enjoy their coffee more. They wanted better quality, whereas in the first wave, it was about convenience, not quality. But it was about 100 years later that people actually started to want better tasting coffee. They wanted to know where their coffee originated. The first Starbucks opened in 1971, and they had grown to 4 stores by the end of the 70s. By the end of the 80s, they had 55 stores. Starbucks started to have higher quality coffee, and they made their shops places of gathering instead of just go in, get your coffee, and go. Coffee shops in general started to make more coffee based drinks like frappuccinos. And that appealed more to the general public and not just the strict black coffee drinkers. Interestingly, during the second wave, beer and spirits sales went down in the US. The alcohol industry found that it was directly due to the higher coffee sales and shops designed to gather and drink coffee. Coffee companies started making higher quality coffee for home consumption at this point, also. The third wave started in the 2000s. Aw, you little 2000s babies. The third wave is made of sophisticated coffee drinkers or coffee lovers. Consumers wanted a great cup of coffee for individual tastes. This is kind of similar to wines. Coffee lovers have preferences for the origins of their coffees, the process involved, the way it's brewed, and what is in the final cup. Great baristas are getting more and more acknowledgement as they know the entire process of how to make a great cup of coffee, among other drinks, in much the way that a sommelier knows wines. Except the barista actually makes it. No offense to sommeliers, because I have huge respect for your knowledge. Another influence of the third wave is sustainability. From fair trades with farmers to the use of agricultural products that won't be harmful to consumers to the recyclable materials that are used in the final cup of coffee. The environment and people are the focus. There are over 41,000 Starbucks stores globally, and there are 45,200 specialty coffee stores in the US. Of that 45,200, over 17,000 are Starbucks and 9,500 are Dunkin' Donuts, which are the two most popular places that have specialty coffee. That leaves about 18,600 additional specialty coffee shops that are either part of chains or independent locations. Just to give a little comparison, the top three fast food places in the US are McDonald's, Starbucks, interestingly, and Chick-fil-A. Altogether, there are just over 34,000 locations of these three fast food restaurants in the US, which is almost 11,000 less than the number of specialty coffee stores. That's how popular specialty coffee is. Probably one of the biggest draws of specialty coffee is the ability to individualize it. Flavorings can include things like syrups, plant nut milks, cream, and functional ingredients like medical mushrooms, turmeric, and collagen. And that doesn't include things like the foam flavors or the cold foam flavors or the foam designs. Added to the different flavors from the different beans, the different flavors depending on the temperature that the beans are brewed at, and the different flavors depending on the length of time the beans are brewed at. And the combinations for a cup of coffee are astronomical. Let's not forget that they put your name on the cup, or if you go through the drive through, they put a nice message on there. Makes you feel good. And if you're one of those crafty people who wants to do all of this at home, not only do you have endless possibilities, but you also have a very creative itch that gets to be scratched in a very satisfying way. I find it interesting That when deciding on the name of the color of the universe, it should be named after the most common daily addiction that exists. So, why cosmic latte? I think there's a lot more to specialty coffee drinks than they just taste good. If you think about when the third wave started, this is when millennials were young adults. The millennial generation was and still is the largest generation that has ever existed. We didn't think any generation was going to outdo the baby boomers. I mean, the millennials beat them by about 10 million, but damn, 74.1 million people born in a generation. They make up 22% of the US population. Look around. Slightly more than one in every five people is a millennial. How much individuality are you going to get when your generation makes up 22% of your entire country? It's kind of easy to get lost in the crowd. And that, my little loves, brings us to the psychological concept of the day: individuality. Individuality is a combination of distinct traits, values, and experiences that makes each person unique. Individuality contains four basic ideas. The first one is uniqueness, and that is that no two people are alike. The second one is self determination, and that says that we can design and control ourselves instead of something like fate controlling us. The third one is pattern. There is a pattern to our uniqueness. So there's a pattern to our behavior, our thoughts, our emotions, all of the things that make up us. And the fourth is what is called self other. We are able to recognize our own patterns. And then we are able to recognize how our patterns differ from the patterns of others. So let's go back to generations. Gen X, still the most independent generation, mostly due to the fact that we had so many latchkey kids and the amount of time that we spent taking care of ourselves. But we didn't focus on individuality as much as millennials. Millennials are different in that they chose to remain undefined, and they chose instead to remain more fluid and open minded in their sense of self, most likely due to all of the changes that happen throughout their lives and their need for adaptability. They focus more on self care, personal happiness, and self esteem. They showed their individuality by being the first generation to normalize therapy, set boundaries, and break generational cycles. They're the first generation to have an extended emerging adulthood due to their need for higher education and the difficulty in living on their own due to the economy. This required them to focus more on themselves and their identity development in a different way than past generations. They focus on experience, like travel, more so than material possessions. As a result of this, they demand customization and brand alignment. They started purchasing brands that fit their sense of self and their personal values. And this paved the way for Gen Z to take individualistic consumerism even further. Gen Z. I love Gen Z. My daughter's a Gen Zer. Gen Z is the most individualistic generation to exist. And I really thought that was us Gen Xers. But nope, that was just selfishness. We still hold the title for that. Not only is Gen Z worried about social justice and sustainability like millennials, but they're even more into authentic, personalized, creative, and relatable content. Their friend groups are more diverse, their style is more diverse, and they are more interested in personal growth and meaningful experiences. Gen Z have a hyper independent and identity driven approach to buying. They expect tailored experiences and they look for bespoke goods. They reject generic items. They aren't interested in name brands, but they look for things to show their identity. They are bargain hunters, but they will pay a premium price for something that aligns with their personality and their ethics. They are the perfect consumers for specialty, or, in other words, individualized coffee with friends. Specialty coffee has become the caffeinated equivalent of a personality statement. In a world where millions of people start their mornings with a cup of coffee, simply ordering coffee feels almost suspiciously ordinary. Instead, we can choose a triple shot oat milk lavender cold brew with a hint of cinnamon and a name long enough to qualify as a short story. Every customization gives us a chance to say, this is who I am, or at least this is who I am before 9 a.m. Part of the appeal is that specialty coffee lets us express individuality in a simple, low stakes way. Most of us can't redesign our entire lives every morning, but we can choose between Ethiopian single origin pour over and caramel crunch nitro cold brew. I have no idea what either of those are. Whether you're a coffee connoisseur, trend followers, or people who just enjoy holding a cup with a really complicated label, specialty coffee gives you a tiny daily opportunity to stand out. It's self expression, social identity, and caffeine delivery all rolled into one very expensive cup. When you think of the fact that Americans drink 300 million cups of coffee a day, it's not too surprising that the chosen color of the universe would be cosmic latte. Very much better than creation cream, which could have a totally different meaning, or vanilla void. Although, to be fair, I kind of like vanilla void. But that wouldn't be really accurate since space isn't really a void. That's a much better description for my soul. That's all I have for today. I hope you learned something new. I hope you enjoyed your time with me today. Please like, share, all that good stuff, comment, whatever you want to do with this, I would be happy. Be safe, take care of yourself, be happy, but most importantly, keep it weird.